Hello, learners. I am Dr. Arunkumar, faculty member, School of Management, Shastra, deemed university. The course which I am going to talk about is research methodology for business research, and the topic for discussion is that introduction to business research. The learning objectives of this, session is that first one I'm going to discuss about describe and define business research. And the second learning objective is to distinguish between two types of research. One is applied and basic research. And I need to give you demonstrative examples and also discussing why they fall into one or the other of the two categories. The third learning objective is explain why managers should know about research and discuss what managers should and should not do in order to interact effectively with the researchers. And the fourth one is identify and fully discuss specific situations in which a manager would be better off using an internal research team, and when an external research team would be more advisable, giving reasons for the decision. And the fifth one is discuss what research means to you and describe how you as a manager might apply the knowledge gained about research. Finally, the final learning objective is that we need to demonstrate the awareness of the role of ethics in business research. So now let us understand what is research. So when I ask you to close your eyes and think about research, immediately your mind may capture like a laboratory with some kind of experimentation stuff, or a thesis or PhD thesis, or your mind may think about some kind of data analytics stuff. All these you will try to remember about when you talk about research. But the matter of fact here is that research consists of all these aspects. And in order to give you better clarity in understanding the concept of research, we all know that research is the process of finding solution to a problem after a thorough study and analysis of the situational factor. See, in any business situation, definitely there will be a lot of issues, problems associated with an organization context, associated with a business context. In that perspective, as a manager, we have to expect to provide solution to that particular problem. And in the process of identifying the problem, we need to also identify what are the factors which causes that particular problem. So, and also some manager may not identify the problem exactly, So in that context, what happens, even though if you don't identify the problem precisely, then you end up with a solution which is not appropriate. So let me give you more clarity. So as I was mentioning about managers in organization, they themselves were constantly engaged themselves in studying and analyzing issues, and hence are involved in some form of research activity as they make decisions at the workplace. And there are many contexts we can quote upon, like for example, if I'm being a marketing manager, if my product is not selling well, what happen? I will look into the the issue. The problem here is my product is not picking up. It is not having a good sales. In that context, I need to identify what are the factors which is responsible for poor sales of that particular brand or product. So maybe there may be advertising, maybe one of the factor, or sales promotion, or the efforts from the sales personnel, and the other distribution of that particular product, availability of the product. And there are many factors may caused that particular problem, that is poor sales, isn't it? So we need to identify the problem precisely and know the factors responsible for that. Sometimes manager make good decisions and problems get solved. Sometimes manager make a poor decision and the problem still persist. The difference between making good decision and poor decisions lies in how manager go about the decision process. So when you talk about the process, it's all about the research methodology. So how are you going to identify the problem, and what are the activities are you going to execute in order to find out the solution for that particular problem? That aspect, if you are very clear and if you are approaching in a scientific manner, and I'm sure that as a manager will make good decisions and the problem gets resolved. Okay, so good decision making fetches a as answer to the following questions. Do managers identify where exactly the problem lies? So that's the first and foremost requirement of any research process. So first one is, do managers identify where exactly the problem lies? So you need to precisely identify the problem. Do they correctly recognize the relevant factor in the situation needing investigations? As in my example, I was talking about poor sales is the real problem. So when there is a poor sales, what are the factors which is contributing towards the poor sales? So we need to identify that. We need to really investigate those real factors which is responsible for the poor sales of that particular brand. Next one is, do they know what types of information are to be gathered and how? So the methodology and the scientific aspects of collecting the relevant information. And there are definite process and procedures are available in terms of formulating a questionnaire, validating the questionnaire, checking the reliability of the questionnaire, and identifying the variables to be in the questionnaire, and also the population identification, the sampling methodology, and there are different techniques in sampling like stratified sampling, proportionate sampling, and the convenience sampling. There are many techniques. Which particular techniques is very relevant and appropriate for this specific study in order to fulfill the requirement of that particular research objective, that you need to I'm talking about what type of information ought to be gathered, at the same time how. This is the process, as a manager has to be very well aware about it. And also, do they know how to make use of information? So analyzing the information, do we have the necessary analytical tools and the statistical methodology in order to analyze the data whatever we collect, and also through a scientific approach are we making appropriate conclusion to make the right decision? If you are not using the appropriate statistical techniques, then definitely your conclusion, I mean the decision, will go wrong. So, and the next aspect is that, do they know how to implement the results of this process to solve the problem? So when you got the findings, and you need to appropriately in that organizational context, you need to implement that decisions, and you need to wait for those outcome where the problem will be resolved because of this implementation of your research findings. Next one is, let's talk about so I have given you an idea about what this research is all about. So, and let us talk about the specific definition aspect of business research. So the definition given here, you can see the slide here. The business research is a systematic, there is a proper procedure, okay, steps, there are certain activities has to be adopted, which is the requirement of scientific research. And the objective inquiry is all about identification of the right problem statement. At the same time, you need to identify the objective and the research questions, what you have to pose to addressing that particular research problems. That provides information to guide managerial decisions, which are arrived at through the process of planning, the systematic activities of executing the research, acquiring the information, relevant information about the associated factors. And once the information has collected, the data collected, we try to analyze into proper information and disseminating this relevant data to the appropriate respective departments, the decision makers in that respective department of an organization, in ways that mobilize the organization to take appropriate actions, to maximize the business performance. As in our case, I was mentioning about the issue of poor sales with a particular brand. If that being the case, when you do research and your finding says that the poor advertisement and the poor promotional campaign is not accepted by the consumers who use that particular brand, then you need to go for a proper advertisement campaign and also a proper promotional campaign, which will satisfy that particular consumer where the research has been carried out, and they were the population of that particular problem area. So, hope you understand the definition of business research. And moving on further, let's talk about the excitement of research. Why an organization should have a research, and what are the modern technology is available in research. And there are many tools available. And now we talk about business analytics, big data, and lot of technological enhancement as modern technology has emerged, so that we can precisely speculate the actions of the business very precisely, and accordingly we can make decisions. And modern technology has made research an existing and relatively smooth process. And also personal computer with any means of internet connections place one with easy reach of knowledge of what is happening in the global market and how the world economy is impacting on business. I can talk about n number of technology. Nowadays, as being a researcher, you have a lot of statistical softwares are available, and lot of observatory technological tools are available, and lot of modern techniques in research are available, which really facilitate the research in a very easy fashion, so that managers can make use of those modern technology and arrive at a specific informed decisions that will really shoot up the business performance what they are indulging in. Okay, next one is let's talk about the decision making is merely a process of choosing from alternative solutions. You all know that. So you need to pick up the best alternative solution which is going to resolve a problem. And of course the research helps to generate the possible alternatives for effective decision making. So this process of research is going to generate the alternative solution, and the research process will also help you to select the viable alternative, feasible alternative, which is going to resolve the problem at hand. And you can differentiate between good and bad studies published in professional journals, and there are various database search engines and databases are available starting from journals, magazine, lot of reports, industrial data, and whatnot. We all have those secondary data available, and you can look into those data and analyze the data to resolve your problem. After all, it's about choosing between different alternatives, and our aim is to select the best alternative out of a proper research process. And moving further to understand about the business research. Business research can be described as a systematic and organized effort to investigate a specific problem. I was mentioning earlier in our definition, which has been encountered in the work setting that needs a solution. I think if being I can quote more examples on this, like in an organization context. If an employee is not motivated, we need to identify what are the factors which is going to really motivate those employee in that real work setting. So like that, there are many contexts where research is going to be very useful in resolving the real-time problems in the business context. And when you talk about business research, which comprises of series of steps designed and executed with the goal of finding answer to the issues, isn't it? So that is the concern for any manager in the real-time, kind of work environment. So, as a manager in real times, work environment, if you look during the turbulent times, and lot of uncertainty has packed, and he has to encounter a lot of uncertainty, both from the internal environment of the organization as well as from the external environment of the business. So in that context, there are certain external environment which is beyond the control of the manager. For example, the political policies. When you talk about the economic environment, when you talk about the legal environment, when you talk about the societal environment, all these are not under the control of the organization or as well as the manager. So we need to really, in that context, he has to really strategize by doing proper research and understanding the factors which really overcome those uncertainty. And moving on further, business research, there are certain steps, specific steps involved in business research. So as a manager, to know where the problem areas exist in the organization, you need to identify that precisely. For example, in our case, I was mentioning about the motivation of the employee. A customer service is not that good in a particular bank. So if the customer service is not good and customers are complaining about the service level, and then you need to go for a research. So what aspects of the employees is really contributing towards the satisfaction of the consumer. So you need to identify the problem precisely, and also the next step is to identify as clearly and specifically as possible the problems that need to be studied and resolved. So once the problem is well identified and almost we are through, we can able to get the proper solution to that problem. If a problem is not identified clearly, then whatever the research process you execute, it is not going to give you a relevant solution to your problem. You cannot make a proper decision, then your decision goes wrong. So just a matter of fact, and the truth is that you need to very clearly articulate the problem area. You need to formulate the research objective, specific research objective. You need to probe the research questions. You have to formulate the research questions properly, and finally you have to come out with the exact problem statement where it needs a research solution. So The next aspect here is gathering information, and there are a lot of I was mentioning about there are many data are available. Broadly speaking, there are two types of data. One is the primary data and the secondary data. Once the data is collected and analyzed, it becomes an information. So analyze the data and determine the factors that are associated with the problem. That's a great exercise, and it needs a lot of meticulous detailing and lot of scientific approach involved so that the problem can be clearly resolved and solve it by taking the necessary corrective measures. So this aspect is very, very important in the process of business research. And when you talk about the connectivity between research and the manager, do as a manager in an organization, do they really need to understand about the research process and the nuances and intricacy of scientific research elements involving in resolving the problem, whatever the manager encounter in the real-time work setting environment? So as a manager, you always encounter big and small problems on daily basis, and which they have to solve by making the right decision. So if that being the case here, in business research is usually conducted to resolve problematic issues in the areas of many broad functional areas like accounting, we have finance, we have management, and we have human resource management, and we have marketing, and there are a lot of sub functional areas always there, which needs a lot of research has to be put into practice. And moving further about, let's understand what are the areas whereby as a manager in an organizational setting is supposed to resolve. So the areas, when you talk about a manager, he may encounter problems in accounting. There are a lot of inventory system which is not in control, and a lot of accounting aspects has to be scrutinized. Thereby, he needs to put the concept of research perfectly there into the accounting, so that he can derive at the relevant required solution, what is which will really resolve his problem area in accounting practices. And also we talk about the budget control system, and there are areas like inventory costing methods, depreciation, time series behavior of quarterly earning, transfer pricing, taxation methods. I'm just quoting the different areas, but there are many areas in an organizational context that we need to really understand. So what are these are the areas, broad areas pertaining to accounting. So I was mentioning about budgeting control system, inventory costing methods, the depreciation, time series behavior of quarterly earnings, transfer pricing, and taxation methods. And when you talk about the problems in finance, you have operations of financial institution, optimum financial ratio has to be found out, mergers and acquisitions, leveraged buyouts, incorporate financing, yields on mortgages, the behavior of stock exchange. These are the research areas, topics which as a manager has to put more effort and do research in those topics. Next one, when you talk about the problems in management, we have need to really study about the employee attitudes and behavior, because all the employees are not different. And when you talk about an employee, the job and the employee attitude and its job involvement in that particular job, and as an employee, he as a manager, he has to understand the personality dispositions, disproportions in relation to the job fit. All that has to be carefully analyzed through the research process. and you have, broadly speaking, human resource management. There are many areas in human resource management, and also the impact of changing demographics on management practices, right, in terms of their experience, in terms of their salary, in terms of their age. All that will definitely impact an employee attitude towards their job. And also we talk about the production operation management, and the most important area is strategy formulation. If a company don't have a proper strategy, definitely the company cannot win the competition, and it cannot attain the competitive advantage over the competitor. So the area of strategy formulation is the main area, I mean a very significant area, which needs a lot of research inputs. And also about the information system, what kind of information system is required, and the modern technology plays a crucial role in providing the information required for providing decision support system. And next one, about the problems in marketing. You got product image, brand image. You got problems in advertising. Sometimes your advertising may not reach the consumer properly, and your sales promotion campaign may not yield a proper result as you expected, and the product distribution, there is no proper reach of the product, and it is not reaching the retail outlets and the end consumer as planned. And also sometimes the product packaging is not so attractive, where the consumers will pick that product by looking at the packaging. So these are the areas. And also about the pricing strategy, and what relevant pricing, appropriate pricing you need to accepted by the customers. All that needs the solution is only through the research process. And also the consumer preferences, and the consumer preferences and the taste varies from one individual. Taste and preferences varies from one individual and to the different individual, and you have different segments of consumers have a different behavioral pattern, different demographic structure. They have a different kind of psychographic lifestyle. All these has to be addressed only through the process of research. And of course, in modern day, and there are a lot of new needs and wants has been emerging out among the consumers. And as a marketer, as an organization, you have to work consistently on fulfilling the value requirement of the consumers on daily basis through the new product development process. And whether this new product is accepted by the customers or not has to be being researched, and to check through the process of getting information about the perception of the consumers. And now let's talk about the types of business research. Research can be undertaken for two different purposes. You all know that. So one is to solve a current problem faced by the manager in the work setting, such as research is called applied research, to generate a body of knowledge about how to solve problems that could be occurred in organization. This is called the basic research or fundamental research. It is also known as pure research. Let me give you more clarity on these two types of research. Basically, we got two types of research. One is the applied research, and the other one is basic research, and otherwise called fundamental research. So what is applied research? Any research which is applied in the real situation, which is called applied research. Let's take a case of Apple's iPod sales increased by 200% from 2001 to 2008, but the sales decreased by 6% in 2009. What is the reason for this decrease? Thereby, there is a scope has been put forward for research, right? So we need to put that research process into real time situation, why that particular sales increased by 200 percentage from 2001 to 2008, but in case of 2009 there is a decline in sales of 6 percentage. What is the reason? What are the factors associated with the decrease in the sales of iPod? So all that you need to, if you want to really uh, provide solution to the particular problem here, you need to go for a proper research. The question here is, what will Apple do about this problem? What are the factors responsible for a decline in sales? That aspect, we call it as applied research. I think you're very clear. Now, in our case also, I was talking about the sales is declining, and we need to identify what are the associated factors, whether it is due to promotion or advertisement or distribution or consumer acceptance or public relation or publicity. What is the real factor which is not accepted by the consumer, which is putting down the sales? That you need to identify only through the research process. Next, moving on to the examples of applied research, I can quote one more example. When you talk about a great company called Xerox. Xerox is the company name. Now, most of the people, for the purpose of photostating, they call it as, please give, put Xerox for me. That's the way the brand has reached the consumers across the globe. So Xerox is an insular and it's not ready for the increasingly competitive high-tech world. Xerox still relies on old-fashioned and slow-selling analog copiers for more than half its revenue, and despite its double-digit growth in digital products and services, its sales rose just 4%. We all know that now digital technology is dominating in this particular industry. Canon is doing better because of the digital technology. And in the Xerox situation, it needs to look into the efficacy of the analog technology used in copier, and the competitor Canon is doing that, and examine what should be done to increase the efficiency and promote its sales. So that's the context for there is a scope for applied research. So this is the problem for Xerox, and as the R&D department has to put this problem area and find out the solution for this particular problem. If that being the case, then it is a kind of applied research. Next one is, let us take an example of basic research. What is basic research? I already mentioned about basic research is about already you have an existing knowledge. Okay. So through that existing knowledge or a particular phenomenon, you are trying to add, substantiate more input. Then it is adding knowledge to knowledge. That is called, we call it as basic research. I can quote an example of university professors like us engage in basic research in an effort to understand and generate more knowledge about various aspects of business, such as the context here is how to improve the effectiveness of information system, how to integrate technology into the overall strategic objectives of an organization, or how to increase the productivity of the employees, or how to increase the effectiveness of small business, how to increase the advertisement effectiveness, promotional effectiveness. There are n number of contexts. You try to put those theories and put into research practice and find a solution. That findings add already to knowledge. I mean, the findings of that particular this kind of research will also adequately add more strength to the knowledge whatever already existed in the domain. Okay. So let us talk about the case example. I can explain you this case here. See, the context here is a manager called Sarah. She's a clerical employee. She's working in a particular bank, and she was observing her colleagues, and the colleagues are very very highly potential and knowledgeable. And how she came to know that because whenever they are dealing with the customer and discussing about the processing of the applications, so that time she came to know that her colleagues are very highly knowledgeable, but they are not more hardworking. They are not motivated enough, and there is a huge waste. It was the talented employees uh, goof off rather than to work hard and enjoy their work. So they are not basically putting their full potential here. That's what Sarah was observing. That is minimum amount of work, availed themselves, a long tea and lunch break, and seeing the unmotivated in the dealings with the customer and the management. These are the observation Sarah was making it. So later on, what happened? She was pursuing a PhD of her. Then her topic of investigation was job involvement or ego investment of people in their job. The conclusion of her investigation was that the single most important contributing factor to job involvement is the match between the nature of the job and personality predispositions of the people engaged in performing it. So her research has concluded, if you find a person who are really fit to a particular kind of job. For example, there are personalities who are extrovert in nature, and they have a real attitude of really serving the customer. That inclination, that kind of customer serving attitude, that kind of personality has to be really associated with that particular employee. If that not being the case, she cannot handle the customer in a very satisfied manner, isn't it? So there are certain people who are very they like very challenging job. They don't like monotonous job. So those kind of personality you have to give a job portfolio which really has a lot of challenges in their work role. So that is this case example is a basic research. Why? Because she has already taken a research domain called job involvement, and what are the factors. She already reviewed the secondary data, and she also did research in that particular various banking organization and found out that the associated factors involved in providing job involvement, and she adds again knowledge to a knowledge, right? So that's all about the basic research. So I think this case example give you a better clarity about basic research. So basic research is all about giving you a conceptual clarity through your findings. Okay, moving on further, the examples of this basic research, these findings later become useful for application, of course, in business situation, and they can apply it, employ it, as the case may be. Next one is what is the distinction between applied and basic research? The main distinction between applied and basic research. Applied research is specifically aimed at solving a currently experienced problem, whereas the basic research has a broader objective of generating knowledge and understanding of a phenomena and problems that occur in various organizational settings. Both type of research follows the same steps, systematic inquiry to arrive at solution to the problem. But the aim differs. So hope I have given you a clear distinction between applied and basic research through the demonstrative examples what I was explaining earlier in our slides. So let's talk about managers and research. Manager with the knowledge of research have an advantage over those without. Yes, of course, it is an obvious fact. If a manager having a research knowledge, he implement his research knowledge wherever the problem area exists, and through the research findings, he make informed decisions. That's why certainly a manager with a knowledge of research have an advantage over others who don't have a research knowledge. Is it true? So next one is the knowledge of research and problem solving process helps manager to identify what is the exact problem situation before they get out of the control. So they can able to really identify the problem situations, and they will put their research expertise, and they try to find out the solution to the problem. Minor problems can be solved by the manager. Major problems would warrant the hiring of outside researchers or consultant in real-time situations in organization. The manager who is knowledgeable about a research, of course, can interact effectively with the researcher, whoever you appoint as an external research consultant, and they can really identify the problem, and they can really frame the conceptual framework, the factors associated with the problem. And so that's the great advantage. That's why I am insisting all of you, all the participants, to give more importance to this subject called business research. Definitely you will be very much benefited by the input whatever I am giving on behalf of Shastra University. Next one is knowledge about research process also help managers to become discriminating recipients of the research findings presented, and to determine whether or not to recommend solution or appropriate for implementation, and also understand the business journals and studies. There are a lot of periodical research, a lot of database, online journals, online reports are coming out every day. There are new facts with the scientific evidence. A lot of findings has come out, and as a manager, they can go through those research findings and check whether they can apply and employ in their organizational context to have a competitive advantage over the competitor or not. So there is a lot of significance and connectivity between manager and research. I think these facts have witnessed our client. There is a real connectivity between managers and research. And as a manager, they have two options. One is they can, if they find any problem, they can appoint either internal consultant or external consultant depending upon the situation. If it is a big organization, of course, you have an internal consultant or researcher. Some organizations have their own research department, which we call the management service department, or organization and methods department, or in some organization it's called the research and development department. I think you are all aware about those departments. Such a department within the organization serves as the internal consultant. If it faces certain problem and seek help, managers has to appoint those internal consultants to resolve the problem and provide solution to the business situation. This unit will be very useful in several ways. These departments are very, very useful providing solutions to the problem existed in real-time situation. So there are certain advantages of internal researchers. Of course, the internal researchers have better chance of being readily accepted by the employees because they are working for the organization where they work. The team would require much less time to understand the structure because they already know the structure of the organization and various parameters of the organization, the philosophy and the climate where they work and the work system of the organization. All that they can very well understand that, and they would be available for implementing the recommendation after the research findings or accepted any time. So that's an advantage. And definitely the internal team might cost considerably less than the external team. And of course, they've been appointed by the organization and kept within the organization. Of course, they don't charge much for their research service. And what is the disadvantages of an internal researcher? They might have less fresh ideas because if you get an expert from outside, because they have a lot of expertise, exposure from various industry, so that particular expertise and exposure level may not be with the internal researcher. That was the statement given here. They might have less fresh ideas and perspectives that might be needed to correct the problems. That not being the case, but in certain cases true, there is scope for certain powerful groups in the organization to influence or misrepresent certain facts. If you are known to certain department heads, that department, the cordial relationship between that consultant, internal researcher, and the department head may become a biased factor, which may not contribute to the real findings of the research. In certain cases, it is possible. Next one is the next disadvantage is that there is a possibility that the internal researchers are not perceived as experts by the management. Hence, the recommendations do not get the consideration and attention they deserve. Certain organizational bias of I was mentioning earlier of the internal research team might make the finding less objective and less scientific. And what are the advantages of appointing an external consultant? See, as I already mentioned, that external consultant, they have a wealth of experience from having worked with the different types of organization. They have a great amount of exposure from various industry across various industry that have had same or similar types of problems. So a lot of conceptual learning, lot of technical learning happens. So different industry practices can be put into different industry. Sometimes it's work out. That exposure level is a real advantage of appointing an external consultant. They might have more knowledge of current sophisticated problem solving models through the periodic training programs, because they are meant for that. They are specialized, highly specialized in research. I think you can talk about companies like AC Nielsen. It's a great IMRB, Indian Marketing Research Bureau. You can appoint their help to resolve your problem. They have a lot of expertise associated with them. And what is the disadvantage of an external consultant? The cost of hiring an external research team is usually high. They need to considerable time to understand the organization to be researched. They seldom get a warm welcome or accepted by the employees, definitely, because they are from different, outside the organization. So definitely they will be perceived differently by the employees, and also they charge additional fees, cost-wise, for their expertise, because their assistance in the implementation and evaluation phases, and definitely they will cost more compared to the internal consultant. And with this, we have seen what are the advantages and disadvantages of appointing an internal consultant and external consultant to resolve a research problem associated with an organization real-time context. And we move on further. Let's understand what is the knowledge about research. How this knowledge about research is going to contribute to the managerial effectiveness. We'll have a discussion on that. The knowledge of research, we all know that it greatly enhances the decision-making skills of the manager, and it makes the manager very professional and make informed decision. And they are very much careful in decision making, and definitely there will not be any error in the decision making, and definitely it will enhance the performance of the organization. So the first component here is, in order to, when a manager is very much knowledge about research, he is capable of identifying and effectively solving minor problems in the work settings. He knows how to discriminate good research from the bad research, and also he is capable of appreciating and constantly aware of the multiple influences and multiple effects of factors in on a situation. He is capable of, if he has good in research, certainly he has the ability of taking calculated risk in decision making, and he knows the entire gamut of the probability associated with the different possible outcomes. So he will definitely carefully select the best alternative from the gamut of alternatives. Next one is, he prevent possible vested interest from exercising their influence in a situation because of the knowledge through his research, knowledge on research, and also he tries to relate to higher researcher and consultant more effectively. He knows for this particular research domain which consultant will be relevant and who may give an effective solution. All that is highly knowledgeable, and definitely, and in terms of cost also, he knows how to negotiate with them because he is having a great amount of knowledge in the process of research. Next one is, he also have the combined experience with scientific knowledge while making decisions. So certainly this inputs is going to really add the effectiveness of managers, efficiency as well as effectiveness, and his productivity of the managers will go up, and that reflect on the organizational performance. And when you talk about the most important areas in research, the ethics and business research, there is always there is an impact of ethics in research. Ethics in business research refers to the code of conduct of behavior while conducting research, which is good, which is bad, which is morally right. Okay, there are certain norms, rules, and regulations, procedures that has to be very truthfully followed. And ethical conduct applies to the organization and the members that sponsor the research. You should not manipulate any kind of research findings. The researcher who undertake the research and the respondent who provide them with the necessary data has to be very clearly, you have to capture the exact truthful information, and there will not be any manipulation of data or any compromise on the process of the research, activities of the research, tools employed in the research. All that need a great ethical insight while following that. And also, the members that sponsor the research should do it in a good faith, pay attention to what the results indicate, and pursue the organizational interest, not their self-interest. and there should not be any compromise from the researcher. And ethical context should also be reflected in the behavior of the researcher who conduct the investigations. Um, and they have to exhibit their behavior, and they should protect the moral values of everyone involved, all the stakeholders involved in the research. The participants who provide the data, sometimes the data has to be kept confidential, that you have to maintain that, so that they can in a free manner they can provide confidential data. The analyst who provide the results, and the entire research team that represents the interpretation of the results and suggests. So ethics is concerned with the entire research team that presents the interpretation of the results and suggests alternative solution. I mean the best feasible solutions. So, with this, we have come to the end of this session. So let me recap on the learning objectives. So in this session, I was talking about the definition. Why the research is required, and I have described various events to understand the significance of research, and finally I define what is business research, what are the factors involved in business research, with the relevant examples. And also I given you a clear distinction between applied research and business research, with the Xerox, the Professor Sarah's case, and the university professor doing research, and also with the Apple iPod case. I have given you a clear distinction between these two concept of research. One is applied and basic research. And I also explained to you why managers should know about research, and also and I also narrated situations whereby where a manager is expected to do research and make informed decisions. And I also discussed about how, as a manager, you apply the knowledge gained about research. And I think all my inputs given you demonstrated awareness of the role of ethics in business research. I also explained the significance of ethics in business research. With this introductory input, I'm sure that as being the participant and learner, you will employ this learning in your real-time context of your work environment, and wherever you go and work, you will employ this concept. And hope by now you would have understood the significance of business research, and certainly I am sure that you developed and you are very curious about understanding other concepts of research and the nuances and intricacy of research aspects. Okay, I hope all of you enjoyed my inputs. Thank you so much.